Hi, and welcome to the sixth video in our cybersecurity labs for beginners. So in this lab, we're actually going to be exploring and kind of upgrading how our networks are configured in our VirtualBox, which will also give us a lot of practice into being able to do this lab outside of a VirtualBox and have it inside of Hyper-V or Proxmox. And that is actually going to be changing from our virtual box networks to a network that we're going to be configuring through a pfSense virtual machine. pfSense, in fact, is a VM that acts as a firewall and a router. Now, you can actually disable the firewall portion of it, but we are going to be keeping that active because we can actually set up a lot of things like snort and actually put it in a IPS mode on that pfSense in order to give us a intrusion prevention system instead of just the intrusion detection system that we saw with our Ubuntu VM configured with Snort. So let's go ahead and let's actually get started. Let's get that set up and get our VMs moved over to that network. So this way we can actually do a lot more configuration on that network and really harden it down in later videos. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, of course, download the pfSense ISO. Now, this one can be a little tricky to install download because they make it a little bit complicated on how to actually download it. So you're going to go to the website pfSense.org. Now that link is going to be in the description down below, so you don't have to worry about it. You can just click on that link. And then you're going to go to the download section, and then in here, there's just going to be the version. Now, this version might be different for you right now, depending on when you're looking at this video. And then there's going to be a little download button. And this is going to take you to what seems to be like a store from Netgate, which is the company that inherently actually owns pfSense now. And they basically make you pick an installation image, which in our case, we want the AMD 64 ISO IPMI/virtual machines. This is the one that we want. And you're going to add that to your cart. And basically what that does is create a cart, which now I have two in there. So you're only going to want one. And then you're going to go and check out. Now, the only thing is when you go to checkout, it does require an account. So you're going to have to make a account for pfSense. And once you do the checkout, you don't have to put in your credit card or anything. It will just be a free download. Once you're done the checkout, it will give you that download. Now, I actually already have it downloaded on my computer here. So if we go into the downloads, we actually have this Netgate installer AMD 64. Now, the other thing is you're going to notice that it is actually a ISO in a zip. Now, if you don't have 7-zip installed, you also won't be able to extract this correctly. So you will have to install 7-zip. I'm assuming that most people usually have 7-zip installed, but if you don't, you can just go ahead, go to your favorite search engine, type in 7-zip, and then it should just be 7zip.org. And then you can download the 64-bit installer for Windows. Most of you guys are more than likely using 64-bit versions of Windows now, especially since Windows 11 is only available in 64-bit. And by this point, most people are going to be on Windows 11, but just download the appropriate version for your operating system. And then you're going to install that, and then you are going to extract the ISO, and it's going to look something like this. It's going to be the Netgate installer version 1, and then in my case, it's from 2024, September 19th, but I downloaded this literally, I think it was probably a week or two ago. And you're going to notice you're going to be able to actually install the most up-to-date version from that as well once we actually go through that installer. So once you have that ISO, everything is done. We are going to open up our VirtualBox manager, and we are going to create a new virtual machine. And we are going to put the name here as pfSense. And our ISO here, now you're not going to have the Netgate installer, so you're going to click on Other. and then go find your Netgate or pfSense ISO here. So I'm going to select this one here. Now the type for this is actually going to be BSD. The subtype is going to be FreeBSD because pfSense is actually a FreeBSD operating system. And the version is going to be the 64-bit FreeBSD. The hardware, now I would recommend not running this under 2 gigs of RAM. But in our case, since we have tons of RAM to kind of spare, I'm going to assign it 4 gigs, especially if you plan on using the snort capabilities later on. Now, we won't be configuring snort on pfSense today. We are just going to be configuring the network, so you can always extend this RAM later on. And then the processor, we're just going to go ahead and assign 2 CPUs. And then the hard drive, you can go ahead and leave that as the default. The default for me is 16 gigabytes. That should be more than enough for what we actually want to do in this lab. And we're going to click on finish. And now there's only one other thing that we actually have to do here, and that is click on our settings. And we're going to need to configure the network adapters. So for adapter 1, you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to want to put that as your bridged adapter. And then network adapter 2, you're going to enable that adapter and you're going to put that on internal network. Now for the name, we are actually going to change this just to show you guys that it does actually create a brand new network, and we're going to be assigning our VMs to this network instead. But to make it pretty easy to know which is which, we're going to be keeping the same name Vuln Labs, but just putting a PF in front of it. So it's going to be PF Vuln Labs. And then we're going to go ahead, we're just going to put promiscuous mode as allow all. And we are going to go ahead and we're going to click on OK here. And then we are going to go ahead and we are going to start our virtual machine. Now this is actually going to boot up into our pfSense installer. So let's go ahead and let's just wait for this. It does typically take a few seconds. It'll just auto boot into the install. You don't have to worry about that first little screen there. And it does usually take a few moments just to get everything configured there. And then you're going to see a blue screen pop up with the installer. And it should be up any moment. Once you get to this point here, it usually pops up and we are at the Netgate installer with that blue screen, and it just goes over the copyright. So we're going to accept this here. And then we are going to pick the default option, which is just install pfSense. We're going to click on enter. And then it's going to be setting up the network to continue the installation. Now it's going to tell you to pick your WAN interface. Now by default, this should always be your EM0 because that is the first network interface that we actually picked. But you can always double check this by also going into the settings here, going into network, and then going into the adapter 1, which is what we're going to want to pick as our WAN network, and look at what the MAC address is here. So we can see that the last 4 digits here is B83A. It might be a little hard because it's kind of grayed out. And here we can see that the EM0 is B83A. So we know that the EM0 is our adapter 1, which is what we want as the WAN interface. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on enter here. And then when it actually prompts you for the network mode setup, you can actually just go ahead and leave these as defaults for now. We want it to be DHCP. We don't want any VLAN tagging. Now, if this is something that you guys would like to actually explore with pfSense, please let me know. And we are going to click on OK here. And now it's going to ask us to actually configure the LAN network once we actually get there. Perfect. And it's going to actually only show you either none or the other interface that's left. We're going to pick that EM1 interface here. We're going to click on enter. Now here what I've actually noticed is even when I actually change these, they don't actually take effect. So I'm just going to leave these as the defaults for now, which is the 192.168.1.1. But what we're actually going to be doing is once our pfSense is actually online, we're going to be changing this, and we're going to be changing that to the same network as our vuln labs, just so we actually get a nice sense that we are actually able to really control what the IPs are. We can make it a little bit different so we don't get confused, but let's go ahead and let's just click on continue here with enter. And it's going to go ahead and tell us that it's detected the VirtualBox virtual machine, and it's telling us LAN is going to be on EM1, WAN is going to be on EM0. Do you want to actually do this? And we are going to go ahead and we are going to click on continue once again. And it's going to actually go ahead and try to reach the Netgate servers to install basically what their paid version is. And they're going to notice that you don't have a pfSense Plus subscription. And we are actually going to install the CE, which is the community edition of pfSense. It is completely free. So we're just going to go and install CE here. And again, now all of these are going to be pretty much the default settings here. We're going to click on continue here. Our stripe is going to be stripe no redundancy. And we are going to pick our 16 gigabyte hard disk to install to. And we are going to say yes here. And it's going to go ahead and commit all those changes. And now we are picking what versions we want to install. Now we are actually going to do the current stable version. I would always recommend picking the current stable version. This way you're always the most up to date, and there are actually options. Once you've fully configured your pfSense, you can actually update it through a web interface as well, so it's very handy. But we're just going to pick the current stable version here, and it's going to go ahead and install this. Now this may take a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording here, and we are going to come back when it is all done, because there is something that we need to do. Otherwise you're going to be kind of stuck in a little loop. But let's go ahead and let's let this install, and we'll come right back. All right, so all the pfSense install is done here. So we're going to click on OK. And this is actually going to then prompt us to actually go ahead and reboot. So we're going to click on reboot here. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click on devices, optical drive, and go ahead and remove that disk from the optical drive. Now, if you actually don't remove the disk from the optical drive, it's actually going to keep going back into that installer. But once you take that out, it's actually going to boot up into the actual pfSense interface. So there it is. And now it does take a few moments, especially for that first time, to actually fully boot into pfSense. But we're actually going to go ahead and wait till it's actually fully booted up there. And then we're going to change a couple settings on our Kali Linux box for the network to then go ahead and be able to connect to that web configuration section and go through that web setup on pfSense, and then go ahead and just put our Metasploitable 2 and our Metasploitable 3 machines on there, just to be able to actually know that everything is actually working. So here we can actually see our WAN and LAN interface here. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to put option 2 here, which is set interfaces IP address. And we are going to configure the LAN interface here. So for me, I'm going to put 2 here. And then it's going to say configure IPv4 LAN interface via DHCP. We are going to put that with an N here. And it's going to say to enter the new LAN IPv4 address. For us, we are actually going to put that as 172.30. We're going to put that .2.1. Now, our VirtualBox network, if you remember, was actually 172.30.1.1. And we're going to do a /24 here. Now, it's going to say, for the WAN, enter a new LAN IPv4 upstream gateway address. For LAN, press enter for none. So we're actually just going to press enter here. We aren't going to be putting anything in. And it's going to say configure IPv4 LAN interface via DHCP. This one, we're just going to say yes here. And then we are going to say, do you want to enable the DHCP server on LAN? We are also going to put Y here for yes. And then it's going to say enter the start address of the IPv4 client address range. Now for us, it's going to be the 172.30.2. and we're going to do dot 100. That means the first address that it's going to hand out is going to be 172.30.2.100. Technically, we could actually put this at 172.30.2.2, but I like kind of just limiting what the addresses are. And then this way, if I actually want to put machines with a static IP address, I don't have to worry about what it's actually handing out. So we're going to do the dot 100 here. And then the end address of our IPv4 client, we're going to do the 172.30.2.150. So my DHCP range is 100 to 150, which gives me 50 addresses, which we are never going to really reach 50 VMs on this network. Of course, I could maybe have maybe 5 or 6 going at once. That's really about it here. And we're going to be pressing enter. And it says, do you want to revert to HTTP as the web configurator protocol? We are going to put Y for yes there. And it's going to go ahead and we are just doing those changes. And it's going to reload the pfSense here. And we're going to hit enter once again. And now we can actually see that LAN interface is 172.30.2.1/24, which is perfect there. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to go ahead and go into the settings of our Kali Linux box, into the network, into adapter 2. And now it says Vuln Labs right now. We are just going to add PF in front of it to put the PF Vuln Labs. And we're going to click on OK here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to start that virtual machine. And that will just take a few seconds to boot up here. So once we are actually fully booted in here, we're going to look at the IP addresses that our virtual machine has. And we're going to notice that it will have a DHCP address from our pfSense. So if we put Kali here as the username and put in that password, and we are going to go ahead, we're going to open up a terminal first to be able to go look at those IP addresses. We're just going to type in IP space address. And we can see that we get the 172.30.2.100. Since it is the first machine on our pfSense, it got the first address. So we can actually go ahead and we can open up a Firefox browser window here. And what we are going to do is we are going to then go into http://172 http://172.30.2.1, and we're going to go ahead and go in there. Now you're going to notice that it's going to ask you to sign in, and you're going to say, we never set up a password. That is okay. It still has the default passwords, which we're also going to be changing in this wizard that we get at the beginning. So the sign in is going to be, the username is going to be admin. The password is going to be pfSense, all lowercase. And once we actually sign in there, it's going to welcome us with the setup wizard. We're going to click on next here on the first one, on the second one, and then the host name is going to pop up here in general information. The host name, I usually just keep this as pfSense. For domain, you could keep this as the default. I like putting it to jack.ca. That's usually what I use as my domain here. And then the primary DNS server, we're going to leave that blank. We're going to leave everything else the way that it is. We're going to click on next. The time server, I always leave this as the default here. And the time zone, you would just pick the time zone that you're in. So for me, I am US Eastern here, and we're going to click on next. Now the WAN interface, all of this, you can actually just go ahead and leave this pretty much as default, other than block private networks from entering via WAN. So this is basically, it says when set, this option blocks traffic IP addresses that are reserved for private networks, as well as loopback addresses. This option should generally be left turned on. unless the WAN network lies in such a private address space as well. So because our WAN is on that bridged network, which is connected to our host, which is the 192.168.50.212 in our case here, we are going to uncheck this, and it's going to let us go ahead and configure and be able to test out our IDS and IPS. And this is going to be in a future video. You could leave this checked. We're just going to make sure that we uncheck it in that next video as well. Well, maybe not the next video, but in the video where we actually set up the snort with the IDS and IPS, because this will let us actually try to ping a internal machine from our host network and actually get blocked, because we would configure a snort rule to block anyone that's trying to ping one of our machine that's in our home lab. So we're going to click on next here. The LAN IP address, we are going to keep that the exact same because it's got our configuration that we did before booting up into here, which is the 172.30.2.1. And here it's going to actually ask us for the new admin password here. So this is where you're going to put your new administrator password, pick something secure and something that you can remember, and click on next, and click on reload here. And this is just going to reload everything in. And we can go ahead and click on finish, and you are all done. It is fully configured. So, and then we're just going to get that. We're just going to accept it here. And here on this main page, you're going to see that we are on version 2.8.1, which is the most up to date. And you can see a bunch of different options here. You can see how much CPU you're using, how much memory you're using. So here you can easily tell if you could lower the amount of memory that you actually need and lower the amount of CPUs that you have assigned to it as well, which is a great thing to kind of pay attention to. And you can also see your disk size here to see if it's actually getting full or not as well, and see the actual uptime and a bunch of different things here. So let's go ahead and let's move this VM to the side. Let's click on our settings for Metasploitable 2 here. And let's go into the network and change from VulnLabs to pfSense. Do the same thing for our Metasploitable 3 machine. And let's go ahead and let's just launch our Metasploitable 2. And we will also launch our Metasploitable 3 machine just to show that everything is actually fully communicating here as well. So once we actually have all these machines up, I'm just going to minimize the Metasploitable 3 machine for now. And we're going to wait for the Metasploitable 2 machine to actually be fully booted up here. So once we have our Metasploitable 2 machine in, we are just going to log in and go ifconfig. And we are going to see that we do have the 172.30.2.101 address, which is perfect. Now from our Kali box, if we go ahead and we try to ping that, we can ping 172.30.2.101, and we can fully ping that just fine. And from the Metasploitable machine, of course, we can ping, and we just hit the numlock here. We can, of course, ping the 172.30.2.100. We can ping that one as well. And if we go ahead and we look at our Metasploitable 3 machine here, we just go ahead, send the Control-Alt-Delete, and go into the administrator. And we're just going to click on close there. And then in here, we can just open up a little command prompt here, and we can do a IP config. We're going to see that we have the 102 address here, and we can even see that we are on the jack.ca domain here. It actually does notice that DNX suffix here, which is awesome. And let's go ahead and let's just try to ping it from our Kali machine here, 172.30.2 192, we can ping it just fine, and then vice versa. If we try to ping our Kali machine here from our Metasploitable 3 machine, we can ping that as well. Now, one thing you will notice though as well is now we can actually ping google.com as well for our Metasploitable 2 machine. Now, we actually had that in a internal network that didn't have any access to the internet before. So we can actually create a firewall rule, which will be the only real configuration that we're doing on pfSense today, other than configuring the entire pfSense network. So what we can actually do is in our web interface of our Kali Linux box here, we're going to go ahead and click on this little hamburger icon, and we're going to click on Firewall and Firewall Rules. And then on the LAN interface here, we are going to add a rule, and then we're going to do the block, and it's going to be from the LAN interface. Protocol is going to be any. The source address here is going to be a LAN subnet here. And then we can go ahead and destination will be any. And we are going to hit save. And you're going to see that this is actually above the default allow LAN to any rule, which is what was actually taking effect before. Now, if we actually try to ping Google, and of course, I forgot to do one thing, which is very important, which is apply the changes here. You're always going to want to make sure you apply those changes. And now if we actually go ahead and try to ping Google, you're going to see that just nothing actually happens. It's getting completely blocked there. And we can actually still ping our Kali box because, of course, we are still on the same subnet there, and pfSense is only operating on the layer 2 and not layer 3, so we can still communicate there. So 172.30.2.100, we can still ping that. And of course, from our Kali box, we can of course still ping 172.30.2.101 just fine as well. Now the Kali box, because we also have that bridged adapter, we will still be able to ping Google from our Kali box because we have those two network adapters. But all we're doing is anything that is just on that PF Vuln Labs, we have blocked all communication out to the internet, of course, because it is still recommended to have Metasploitable 2 machines not connected to the internet. Now, most of the time, they just really mean actually exposed to the internet, and now this would never actually be exposed to the internet because we aren't directly exposing, we aren't port forwarding to our pfSense or anything like that. Unless you have, then that would be the case. But here we are just making extra sure that we cannot communicate to the internet from these boxes, just to give that little bit more sense of security there. And if you want to see, you can even test other websites as well, like yahoo.com. Won't work if we try to ping facebook.com. It will not work either. Now, of course, if you need to access the internet, let's say to go and do an update for whatever reason, or try to do something else, you can easily disable that rule or not put that rule in place if you don't want to. But if you do want to make sure that you are blocking the internet on that Metasploitable 2 machine and that Metasploitable 3 machine, or any other machines that are going to be on just that PF Vuln Labs network, you can go ahead and do that. Now, of course, as well, is if you actually assigned static addresses to these machines and you only want to block the Metasploitable machines to access the internet, of course, you can always change the source from LAN subnets to those specific machine IP addresses. So only those machines can't communicate to the internet. But then if you bring up other machines on that network, they would be able to communicate to the internet. There are a bunch of different options that, of course, that you can do with pfSense. If you guys want to see a lot more with pfSense as well, other than just basically using it to configure our network instead of having the VirtualBox network, please let me know in the comment section down below. Now, there will still be other pfSense videos. Like I said, we're going to be configuring Snort on this as well. So be sure to stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you guys on the next video. Have a good one.